I really find 8-inch boots attractive, especially in a rugged combat service or outdoor boot format. They hug the calf better and make you feel more secure. So in service of that attraction, if you feel the same, I thought I'd look at two 8-inch boots at two ends of the cost scale. G'day, welcome back to my channel, Bootlosophy. And if you are new to it, my name is Tek. Nija Buja Kalikor, Wajak Nonga Buja. So I have in front of me two of my favorite 8-inch boots, the Nicks Overlander and the Craft & Glory Combat Boot. It's a little bit short of 8 inches, but it's nearly there. They come from two ends of the scale. The Nicks sells for US $629 in this configuration, and the Craft & Glory for just under $320 US. Both are really well made in terms of QA/QC, and both are comfortable in different ways. So I thought I'd discuss for you what you get for those two prices on the assumption you're looking for an 8-inch boot. I've put links to both the brands below, so you can look at the specs direct from the horse's mouth, as it were, but just be aware that they are affiliate links if you do choose to buy. But first, let me run you through the Nicks Overlander. This is a work boot that Nicks says is also a hiking, outdoor and casual boot, especially in this Spokane waxed flesh from Horween. Horween, the famous Chicago tannery, produces a leather called Chrome Pack, quite similar to their Chrome Excel. Where Chrome Excel is combination tanned, veg and chrome, Chrome Pack is more heavily chrome tanned and shows as a supple leather that's more matte than CXL and well suited to a casual boot. Spokane is a variation which takes the Chrome Pack and then adds a veg retannage to make it a little bit more firm. In this Spokane wax flesh version, they turn it over into rough out and add a wax coat in the same way as they do to the rough outside of Chrome Excel to make Horween's waxed flesh. The Spokane wax flesh, however, in my opinion, retains more suppleness after waxing, whether it's because there's a less thick coat of wax or for whatever reason, like the veg tan. It also doesn't wear like Horween's wax flesh, rubbing off rather than flaking off to show the nap. I chose the Nicks H&W last for this build. The H&W last has a less aggressive arch, but still includes all the elements of all that leather underfoot. It is a stitch down constructed boot where the uppers are flared out and then stitched to a midsole with more thicknesses of leather under the arch forming the arch support with the ultimate leather shank but without a built-up lineman's shank. This is really enough for me in my use of this as a hiking and orienteering boot in our southern hardwood forests. The Vibram V100 lug sole is super thick and hard, and on concrete surfaces can be quite severe. But out in the bush, it is super grippy and very protective. The stitching and the screws means it stays on. Obviously, I'm not going through a full review here. You can check out my full review for yourself on my channel. But the highlight is for me how such a heavy and solidly constructed boot can be so comfortable. The layers of leather in the sole obviously help, as do the uppers leather for their suppleness and supportiveness. But I also think the 8-inch shaft does help a lot. Now let's turn to the Craft & Glory Combat Boot. When Craft & Glory first released this, it was called the Gurkha boot in tribute to those tough Nepalese soldiers. But I think there is a cultural and copyright issue about calling products Gurkha. So now on their website, this is called the 8-inch combat boot. The construction is Goodyear welted, where the uppers are turned in under the insole and then connected to the sole construction using a thin strip of leather called the welt. The inside edge of the welt is stitched to the insole uppers on the inside, and on the outer edge of the welt, an edge stitch goes through the welt and the layers of the outsole. The leather, uniquely, is Asian water buffalo, and it has a light suppleness for its 2mm thickness. It's chrome tanned, which might explain it, and the hand is a lot drier and less waxy than the Spokane wax flesh. The full grain buffalo leather shows a really interesting grain. Like if you look closely enough, you see pores of the animal's skin and with a very attractive grain pattern on it. As a Goodyear welted boot, it has a cork filler between the leather insole and the leather midsole, a steel shank, and the composition of the Craft & Glory Commando lug sole is softer than the V100, and so footfall and comfort is kind of squishy as opposed to the harder clunk of the Nicks footfall. There are interesting details in the design of the boot, notably the rivet at the corner of the quarterpiece and the knife pocket on the shaft. Again, I have already reviewed this pair in deep detail, so you can go watch that as well. Now let's go through a comparison of what I feel are the key elements of each boot. First of all, as I've already mentioned, the Nicks is made from Horween Spokane veg retanned chrome pack based leather. The combat boot uses a buffalo leather from an Asian water buffalo. Craft & Glory use the buffalo for all of their boots, and in this case they seem to keep waxes off the grain side to produce a kind of distressed, what they call vintage brown, which shows off the unique grain effect on the surface. The weights of the leathers, not the thickness but the weight, seem quite different. The combat boot buffalo leather is about 2 millimeters thick, but it's quite disproportionately lighter than the Spokane's 3 millimeter thickness, I think because the fibers are looser. It's much more supple, and the hand or the feel of the surface is smooth and dry. The Spokane is essentially a rough-up. It's also very supple, but as it's thicker, feels like it could withstand a lot more scraping and scuffing. Now, don't get me wrong, I have worn the combat boot in the same places I've taken the Overlander orienteering, and it hasn't reacted badly, except that from the hand and the weight, it kind of feels less sturdy in the long term, whether that's true or not because of the fiber structure. In terms of the comfort of the uppers, the combat boot is quite a bit softer and so feels easier to slip on. But that Spokane feels more supportive, and that support has a lot to do for comfort. In terms of the comfort underfoot, the combat boots feel, they don't, but they feel like they squish. I think that's just from the cork filler and the thinner in and midsole leathers and the softer lugged sole rubber. They're very comfortable, but the softer outsole composition may mean that they will wear a bit faster. As for the comfort of my Nicks, I consider them one of my top 5 most comfortable boots that I got in 2025, so you can watch that video as well. And their comfort even extends beyond their being such a heavy boot. The Nicks Overlander weighs over 1¼ kilos per boot, whereas the combat boots are only a bit over 750 grams. Most of the weight difference will be in the leather weight, as well as the heavier underfoot leather construction in the Nicks, and a large part of it down to that Vibram outsole, pretty thick stuff. For water and dirt resistance, stitch down construction and Goodyear welted boots are both water resistant in their construction, and both have gusseted tongues. But the Nicks uses a thinner piece of different leather. It is fully gusseted, whereas the combat boot uses the same leather as the uppers and is only partially gusseted. Another standout difference to me is the hardware that the two brands use. The Craft & Glory boot uses antique brass, solid enough and well protected at the back with washers, but the speed hooks are of that pressed metal bent back type. The Nicks, like all P&W boots, they use solidly milled brass posts for the speed hooks, although the backs of the hardware don't use protective washers. In terms of the QC of production, I think both are really good. The stitching on the Craft & Glory boot is, I think, more clean and precise, but Nicks do hold their handmade status very proudly. So you'll see more stitches per inch, for example. But honestly, that doesn't affect wear, only looks. The stitching on the sole, yeah, well, let me hold both up to show you. Again, with modern glues, lock stitches and screws and nails, it doesn't affect durability, only the aesthetics. Both these boots are relatively new in my collection. The Nicks I got in May of 2025 and the Craft & Glory in April. I have worn the Nicks more than the Craft and Glory, just by a couple of weeks more, but both have been worn in mainly the same conditions, walking through grass, rock and sand, and in forest undergrowth. Nevertheless, I can't obviously say I have experience of either's long-term durability, but in comparison with about the same amount of wear, I don't have any doubts about either's long-term capability to deliver. But if I can offer a prediction, the Nicks I think will wear better. What you can expect for the more that you pay for it. But the Craft and Glory won't disappoint for its price. As high-shafted boots, and despite the weights of the leathers, both offer, I think, really good protection of the foot and ankle, and good weather protection as well. In summary, I don't think you can go wrong with either boot, bearing in mind the difference in price and therefore the relative status of things like materials, experience in the craftsmanship, and long-term durability. It depends on what you want to pay from your pocket, and your choice is going to reflect that. The combat boot is a little softer underfoot, but that may mean you need to resole it faster. The Nicks upper leathers is from Horween, and while there's nothing wrong with the Craft and Glory buffalo leather, you obviously pay a little less for it. The Craft and Glory hardware is not as solid, but it is well backed and it contributes to that lower cost. As I've said before in many of my previous videos, it's horses for courses. You decide what you want and you choose according to your needs and desires. And if you choose an 8-inch boot from between these two, whichever you pick, I don't think you'll regret your choice. As I hope you don't regret watching this video. If you don't, then help my channel out and click on like, and if not already, give my channel a sub. I'm back next week, and until then, take care out there and see you back here soon.